Well, George, what are we doing today?
We're going on a road trip with...
Yay! But first things first, we got to charge up the Kia EV6. I'm Randy Stern.
I'm George Torline.
And this is Victory in Reseda.
The 2022 Kia EV6 is currently Kia's fully electric vehicle offering based on the E-GMP platform, which is also shared by the Hyundai Ioniq 5 and Genesis GV60. This version from Kia exudes a sporty flair with its unique design, yet still provides the proportions of a crossover SUV. Its wheelbase is 114.2 inches, giving it a generous amount of interior space between the wheels. Also contained within its wheelbase and under the floor is its battery. There are two battery size options for the EV6, a 58 kilowatt-hour battery, which can only be paired with a rear-wheel drive version of this vehicle, and a 77.4 kilowatt-hour battery, which can be paired to both rear and all-wheel drive versions. Power and range are impacted by number and size of electric motors utilized in the different trim levels along with their battery size. Let's take a look at how Kia configured the various trims. The only model available with their smaller 58 kilowatt-hour battery is their light rear-wheel drive model. From there, all other trims use the 77.4 kilowatt-hour battery and use different size motors in either single or dual motor configurations. This provides a nice selection of options to power the EV6, be it if you prefer longer ranges between charges, or more power with the larger dual motors for more driving excitement, like in the GT model. DC fast charging is very quick on this platform. On a 350 kilowatt-hour DC fast charger can add nearly 70 miles in less than 5 minutes and up to 217 miles in under 18 minutes when charging the battery from 10 to 80%. For level 2 charging, running at 240 volts AC at 40 amps, it is estimated to charge from 10 to 100% state of charge from about 7 hours and 10 minutes. Our tester is a GT-Line all-wheel drive. For our road trip test, we'll be starting from an Electrify America supercharger in Woodbury, Minnesota, and traveling eastward on Interstate 94 to Eau Claire, Wisconsin, and back. That should come to about 160 miles round trip. How many miles of charge will be remaining upon our return? Stay tuned to find out. Meanwhile, let's join Randy to see how he is progressing with getting our tester charged up for our trip.
Right now it's at 98%, so we're going to top this off all the way to 100 because we want to make sure we want to get to our destination without running out of juice.
That's right, and we're going to have optimum conditions today where it's in the 60s, very little wind. Now it's sun to use air conditioning, so we're going to see what kind of range we're going to get out of this.
Absolutely. So you're wondering why I'm not wearing any Victory in Reseda stuff. Well, I went to my closet, picked out this t-shirt. Just a shout out to my man John Wayne Faw of JWP Automotive and Budget Auto Repair, both in the Twin Cities. He's a great guy, great friend, great supporter of Victory in Reseda. Hey, listen, if you can't support your friends, who are you not going to support, right? However, speaking of support, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click on the notification bell to find out about future videos from Victory in Reseda.
Meanwhile,
it's finished. We're at 100%, so we're just going to unplug this sucker here. Thank you, Electrify America, for supplying some great DC fast charging. Believe this or not, we went from 39% to 100%. And it only costs $22.62 for the recharge. Isn't that amazing? So let's get on the road.
We're at 100%. It thinks we have 281 miles. Let's do this.
We are on our way to Eau Claire from Woodbury, Minnesota. And we're with our car club. One of the car clubs we're involved with, right?
That's right. And we're all going together, about say 15 cars or so, I think.
Not all together, really.
Yeah, we're kind of spread out.
We're a little spread out. We're at the lead of the pack, but you know.
We've been underway now for about 20, 30 minutes or so, and so our range is still looking pretty good. We're looking at 240 miles at this point, and we've been traveling between 70 and 75 miles an hour. So efficiency has been okay. The car is telling us about 2.7, 2.8 miles per kilowatt hour, and it's been a very comfortable drive so far.
Not only that, but also we're at 86% state of charge right now, which is 86% of the battery life at this point. The strategy is that we want to take a look at what the range is when we get to Eau Claire, because that will determine whether we're able to charge up back in Eau Claire or see if we could risk it back to Woodbury to the EV charging station there and then recharge it back to 100.
So we are going through some construction areas, so there are some bumps here and there. So
I
apologize for that, but otherwise this is a very pleasant highway vehicle. It's quiet, it's smooth.
It really is, and you know, it's just a nice, pleasurable vehicle to drive.
But on our road trip, we are seeing other electric vehicles. In fact, we do have an electric vehicle behind us, which happens to be a Tesla.
It's good to know that there are other EVs out on the same route, possibly going to the same place or even further afield, because the important thing about EVs, and the biggest question that comes up with EVs, is can you do a road trip of any distance in one, even if the charging infrastructure is not there, which has always been the biggest discussion, especially here in Minnesota.
That's right, and it's improving all the time. So on our trip, there's one that's in Eau Claire, and you'll find them spread out intermittently, but you'd want to plan your journey to make sure that for your particular EV that you do have the charging infrastructure that you need for your particular vehicle along your journey.
Absolutely. So George, let's talk about the Kia EV6. Now, what really makes the drive as pleasurable as is right now, it's not just the driving dynamics of the E-GMP platform that the EV6 is riding on, but the interior cabin as well. I mean, it's very nice. There's a lot of familiarity between this and the Ioniq 5, but there's also plenty of differences.
That's right. Certainly the roofline is one of the biggest differences between this and the Ioniq 5. So the amount of space that you'll see back in the cargo area, you don't have that squared off back end much like the Ioniq 5. So it tapers down. It looks sporty, but you can't fit quite as many things back in the storage area and the cargo area.
However, you can seat 4 adults, which is important. So one of the challenges I've had being a taller person and with a tall torso is trying to make myself comfortable behind the wheel. Now, at first, rubbing up against the roof liner. However, I was able to lower the seat and found the seat was slightly uncomfortable, but I've somehow, some way, it read my body and it was fine. I have enough leg room, I have enough leg control for the pedals, so I'm okay. But that's the one thing you got to do with the EV6 is make sure you have a comfortable driving position and make sure everybody else is comfortable as well, especially with this lower roof line.
Right. When I got in, I felt like I had to lower my seat, and I think the seat is lowered as far as it can go already. So you might find getting in and out a little bit tricky.
The one thing to note about that is one of our colleagues did warn us about the A-pillars because they're right back pretty far. So the one thing is once you negotiate the A-pillars, and then you try to find that that almost perfect seating position.
But once your seat is adjusted and you're all set, it's a comfortable vehicle.
Exactly. As far as instrumentation is concerned, it's very familiar. If you've been in the Ioniq 5, then you basically see it's similar than in here in the EV6. And
I like the black bezel design over the white. I like how it's black instead of white.
I agree. But the only thing is this is kind of a piano black, so got to be careful with fingerprints and whatnot.
True.
There's plenty of piano black here, though. The switch for the ignition is on the console. You have a few controls here. The gear lever is a knob type, which is similar to what you see in some Hyundai, Genesis, and Kia models. If you've been in any Hyundai, Kia, Genesis model, then there's some familiarity. I also like the 2-spoke steering wheel here with the flat bottom and it's a really cool design, very tactile, logical controls, and on center feels pretty good.
As far as the front cargo area, the frunk, you'll see it's very similar to that as what is in the Ioniq 5. This is the all-wheel drive model, so you'll see that there is that about 1 cubic foot space up there that you can store cables or small items or first aid kits, things like that.
Or you could put them in the underfloor storage in the rear hatch area, for where right now that's where the cable's sitting, along with a tire kit and another adapter. So honestly, I'm not a fan of this frunk. I'm not a fan of this little small compartment because I'm trying to work out as to what you can really put in there.
It's nice they have something, and granted the rear wheel drive version then frees up space to have a much larger compartment for the frunk. But it's nice they have something, and it gives the engine a cover, or that space a covering, which is aesthetically nice. How do you find the braking and the acceleration?
Acceleration is very good. I'll give you a good example. It really is responsive. I mean, the thing is, you don't want to make...
Good for passing.
Yep, indeed. Braking response is good. The pedal feels real good. You can do one pedal driving, but to be honest with you, I'm not 100% on board with that. I'd rather brake my own car as opposed to let the vehicle brake for itself.
That takes a little getting used to with the one pedal driving, but that can be rewarding as far as the range, but it does take some work to modulate that, the accelerator pedal for that.
We reached our destination in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, and now returning back to the Twin Cities.
So Randy, we're now on our way back. We've got 80 miles to go on our return journey, and we departed with an available range of 185 miles. So are we going to give it a top off before we go back?
In theory, we should make it. Well, because the fact is that if we get off of Woodbury, my estimation or my guesstimation would be we would have about around 100 miles left of charge. Right now, we're at 173, we're at 64% of battery. Now, with all the numbers, if we calculate all the numbers, yeah, we can make it to Electrify America in Woodbury, recharge it, and we'll have more than enough to have this car returned back to Kia.
Yeah, and the weather hasn't changed a whole lot. We're still, about 72 degrees, and the winds are still pretty calm, maybe a slight tailwind, but it's less than 5 miles an hour. So.
Yeah, but I'm not counting on the tailwind actually to try to help because, again, there are so many variables when you drive an electric car, and especially when you're trying to plan out a journey. If you're doing a long distance journey now, keep in mind that we're talking about 80 plus miles between St. Paul and Eau Claire, which is fine and dandy. However, as we keep on saying in everything we write about on electric vehicles, range. Always know what your maximum range is. And then know when your charging stations are along the way, especially if you're taking a long journey. Because sometimes you don't want to go the wrong direction and find yourself without a charging station for almost to the time that you have no battery left. You don't want to be caught stranded somewhere.
Yeah, that'd be very inconvenient because to be rescued on the roadside may involve having the vehicle towed, depending on what the emergency service provider is capable of providing. So planning your route, making sure that you've got DC fast charging stations along your route, and account for weather. So if you're going in very cold conditions, you'll want to make sure that you account for a little bit smaller battery life and weather conditions. If you're going to be facing a lot of headwinds aerodynamically, or if you're going to be driving very fast, that adds a lot of drag to the car. So the faster you go, the quicker that battery is going to go. So factor that in as well. So we're on our way back, and we'll give you an update at our arrival to the charging station.
Okay, we made it. We finalized our trip from Eau Claire and back. We did a recharge, and George, why don't you tell the folks what the data is?
Well, on our trip to the destination, we started with 283 miles, thereabouts, of range. When we arrived, it told us we had about 185. And we decided, yeah, we're going to go ahead and do the return trip without doing a charge. As we thought, well, since we have about 80 miles to go, it should give us plenty of range. When we arrived at our destination here at the charger, we had a reported range of about 98 miles. So it estimated fairly well. And we encountered some stop and go traffic along the way due to road construction and accidents. Factoring that in, it didn't create too much of an energy penalty for us. So
not at all.
It did a good job of estimating the range. So overall, it was pretty much what we expected. What the car told us of what it would do is pretty much what it did.
Exactly. So we've learned from every EV we work with, what the limitations are, which one's going to charge better than the other, which one will hold their charge better. I mean, how performance in terms of range versus capacity versus all the factors, especially when you're traveling longer distances. It's worth repeating, and that is plan out your trip. The one thing that I have to bring up is you're going to have to add at least 30 minutes. And the reason why I say 30 minutes, because that's on average we found ourselves charging up the vehicle all the way to top. Now, normally, the manufacturers say, well, if you cap up to 80%, you should be fine, which is great. But we kept on going to practically 199%. The reason for that, we want to maximize our range and also really do better calculations in terms of how the battery performance is, and especially the vehicle performance on top of that.
Right, how well it accomplishes the advertised range and how well it charges and the speed of charge. So that took about, like you said, about 30 minutes to go from percent.
We were down about 36%, yes.
Yeah, 36% up to almost the full 100% in about 30 minutes, which is pretty darn good.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that's a DC fast charger, 350 kilowatt. And it's certainly one of the speedier cars out there that can accomplish that.
Absolutely. So that's something to take in consideration, and we experienced the same with the Hyundai Ioniq 5. And since we got the Genesis GV60 coming up, we probably would expect basically the same.
Pricing for the 2022 Kia EV6 starts at $42,695 for the light rear-wheel drive model and ranges to $57,695 for the GT-Line all-wheel drive. Pricing for the GT is not available at the time of this video production.
All right, so thanks for coming along on our road trip. We hope to be able to do something similar to this. However, for now, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click on the notification bell to find out when our next video comes out. I'm Randy Stern.
I'm George Torline.
And this is Victory Reseda. So long, everybody.